Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are in the middle of the 2039 season, and it has gone way better than expected for this Pirates team. We are 56-34. We are somehow, inexplicably, tied with the Yankees for the best record in baseball, despite having the lowest budget and the lowest payroll in the sport. We're generating a lot more revenue per game. You can see we've had pretty good attendance so far this year, driven by the excellent record that the Pirates have had. Just made an offer to the player that we believe is the best international amateur free agent available. We've got the fourth pick in the upcoming Major League Rookie Draft. And we've got the All-Star Game coming up. And we've also got some money to take on some contracts to help us. Took a look at who's on the trade block right now here on July 1st. And there's interesting players, but no one we feel we have to go after right at this moment. But hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we'll kind of identify the many needs that we have to fill on this team to keep it competitive. We were only hoping to be around 500 this year in our second season of managing the Pirates. You can see we did make good progress in our first season last year. But now that we are in the mix, we're going to go for it, and certainly would be very disappointed at this point if we don't end up in the playoffs. Taking a look at the standings, we somehow have a 10-game lead on both the Cardinals and the Reds. And our brilliant rookie, Isaiah Hill, is hitting .303 with 28 homers, 83 runs driven in, 11 stolen bases without being caught, 165 OPS plus, 160 WRC plus, and a 5.0 WAR. He seems like a shoo-in to be the National League Rookie of the Year this year. And quite honestly, if we remain a playoff team, he's probably going to get some pretty strong consideration for National League MVP. So he has been the key addition to our team. We made a ton of moves in the past offseason, bringing on a couple new pitchers and then a whole load of new position players, either through our farm system like Hill, through the Rule 5 draft, through free agency, and through trades. Those players are having various levels of success that we kind of talked about at the end of our previous episode, but the end result has been a team that is way ahead of expectations, way ahead of our timeline for potential improvement. And when you got a shot to go for it, you're going to go for it. So unless something crazy happens over the next 3.5, 4 weeks, the Pirates will likely be buyers as we get closer to the trade deadline. In a move that can't be termed a surprise, right fielder Juan Quiles, who we felt was far and away the best international amateur free agent, prefers an offer from somebody else. So we are going to hopefully be able to find someone else to make an offer to as far as the international amateurs. You just look at Quiles' profile and off-the-chart contact gap power, excellent home run power, great speed, high work ethic. Barely 16 years old, just a perfect prospect. We figured everyone was going to be going after him, and it would be an upset if he were to sign with the Pirates, but he was just such a clean prospect and such a potentially good prospect that we had to give it a shot. Unfortunately, Quiles rejected us so quickly that we've still got options to some decent players. Was planning on going with starting pitcher David Villalona if things fell through with Quiles, and still may. Like the work ethic, like the fact that he's barely 16 years old and he's already throwing in the mid-90s. If those three pitches all develop, his fastball, sinker, and slider, he's got the stamina to be a starter. Definitely someone we're worth taking a shot on. I do feel like we're outfield heavy in our organization, so just going to revisit the catcher and the infielders who are also out there. Catcher Alex Alvarez, I like his bat, like the fact that he's durable, love the personality. issue is he's only an average defensive catcher, and I really want to have someone above average behind the plate. Juan Arteaga, second baseman, love the durability, like the personality. The arm isn't great. He's clearly a second baseman. He's 6 foot. You could play him at first if you had to. Not really an outfielder. And his bat, profiles is a little bit above average, but he's just not all that exciting to me. And last but not least, third baseman Jorge Garas. Like his bat a little more. Like the high work ethic. He's a third baseman, or at 6'4", a first baseman. You could also play him in left or right if you had to. You wouldn't feel great about it. Doesn't have a ton of speed. To me, it comes down to Garas or our pitching buddy, Villalona. And I'm always a sucker for pitching, especially if you're a 16-year-old who can throw in the mid-90s and has a good work ethic. So we are going to go ahead and see if we can make an offer to Mr. Villalona. Says he really likes our organization and would love to come play for us, but I've been through this enough to know that they say that to all the boys. But we've given him a $5 million offer. We'll see what happens. And the All-Star teams were also announced today, so let's see who made it from these Pirates. I'm pretty confident that Isaiah Hill will be an All-Star, and our pitching staff has been so great that I would expect we may have a starter or two on the All-Star team. But other than that, who knows? Let's find out. Yeah, Ricky Gotti, starting pitcher, 10-4 record, 2.98 ERA, 26-year-old, really kind of bursting into his own this season after he led the league in losses the year before we took over the team. And then even last year was 10-14 with a 5.24 ERA. We definitely focused on tightening up our defense in the offseason, and I think that has helped all of our pitchers. Adam Fuchs, our catcher, is an all-star. He's the guy that we picked up in a trade with Kansas City right when we were starting out this sim. He was a backup in KC, player that we were familiar with. Great personality, very good defensively, and now he is a first-time all-star. The issue is that he's been a very affordable player, and his arbitration number is getting high, $6.6 million next year, so he may be pricing himself out of Pittsburgh with the excellent season that Fuchs is having for us. Other than Mr. Fuchs, yeah, third All-Star, Isaiah Hill. Not a surprise to see him there. As we talked about earlier, just having an incredible rookie season at this point for the player who was picked number 1 overall by the Pirates back in 2034. So a big improvement for the Pirates to have 3 All-Stars this season, and they're all legitimate All-Stars as opposed to last year when we got one sympathy All-Star who was hitting, I believe, 207 at the time and hit 205 for the season because they had to put a Pirate on the All-Star team. And some really bad news for the Pirates. Young prospect Luis Molina, who had been pitching very well in Indianapolis, 11-2 record with a 191 ERA. Second round draft pick back in 2037 for the Pirates, and a player that has rapidly moved up through the system. Was definitely going to be a September call-up for us, and honestly, depending on what we were able to pick up in the trade market, he may have been on the team within the next few weeks. Out for the rest of the year with shoulder inflammation. Hopefully it won't have a significant impact on his future career and his long-term health. But definitely a bummer that one of the guys we were thinking was going to potentially help us in a playoff push, and hopefully is also a big part of the future of this organization, has his season finished on the 4th of July. And good news, we did get our backup plan among the international amateur free agents. David Villalona signed with us, so the 16-year-old is going to go to our international complex probably for the next 2 or 3 seasons, but I look forward to seeing what he can develop into over the coming years. And although we haven't played a ton of games so far in July because of the All-Star break, Pirates kind of starting to come back to earth a little bit in terms of our record in the standings. See, we've lost 4 in a row, and our lead on the Cardinals and the Reds is down to 7 games. Way behind the Yankees now for the best record in baseball. We're now 5 games behind them, even though we were tied with them at the start of the month. But that happens when we go 4-6, lose 4 in a row, and they are on a 9-game winning streak at this point. So certainly we're never expecting that we were going to finish with the best record in baseball. But as I talked about at the beginning of the episode, certainly going to be a major disappointment if we're not a playoff team this year. And we are on to the first-year player draft, where our Pirates will be picking 4th. I've done a lot of scouting personally on my own. Haven't forced you to watch all of it. And if you watched our previous episode, you'll know that when the list of the top 10 prospects came out back in April, took a quick look through some of them, and I quickly decided that I felt the top prospect in the draft was Rich Gilbo, 18-year-old center fielder from Texas. Has a high work ethic, pretty solid defensively, excellent speed, very good stealer and base runner, excellent at bunting, great contact hitter, potentially great gap power, average home run power, but potentially a good eye, good avoiding strikeouts, and he's durable. My thought is if he happens to be available at the 4th pick, it seems kind of a no-brainer to me. Guess the only hope is that the $12 million bonus demand scares a few people away. We would absolutely take him. The home run power is kind of the only thing you can maybe hold against him. But if he fully develops, this guy looks like a 330 hitter who, with that speed and that gap power, bats 330 potentially with 45, 50 doubles, 10 triples, and still potentially has enough home run power to be a 15, 20, 25 homer guy in a big season. No question that he fully no certainty that he will fully develop. But if he happens to be around, he's going to be who we go with. If not, we'll dig deeper into some of the other prospects and get your thoughts. But there's 4 picks before us: Baltimore, Milwaukee, and Texas. Let's go step by step to see if others agree with me that Mr. Gilbo is the best player out there. Yep, they certainly did. Not a surprise. But Mr. Gilbo went number 1, as I would have taken him. So looks like everyone had or not everyone, but at least the Baltimore Orioles had a similar view. So we'll move ahead to our 4th pick in the draft and see who's off the board at this point. I'll let you know if they were players that I was potentially thinking about. In addition to Gilbo, Raul Sanchez. I think his personality was what I didn't like. Yeah, really nice prospect, but looking for tons of money, and also has not the best personality with that low work ethic. So I agree that he was an excellent player, but not someone that we were going to take. And then Ruben Garza. I don't think he was on our radar for someone to take number 3 overall or number 4 overall. Definitely a decent hitter. Good competition at Kent State. A little older prospect. Like the speed. Decent outfielder. But he was definitely not on our short list of people to potentially be taken at number 4 in the draft. So bummer that Gilbo is gone, but wish that last year when we had the number one pick, there was a guy that just stood out to me like Gilbo is clearly the number one guy, because that would have made what was a painful decision last year much simpler if there was a player like him available. See who our scouting director recommends that we take with the fourth pick in the draft. This is a guy who is on our short list, Alex Ruaucho. Looking for a lot of money, 18-year-old, but certainly profiles as a very good hitter. If his contact, gap power, home run power, eye develop, he's above average to excellent in all of those categories. Going to strike out a decent amount. Has good speed on the base paths to take advantage of that gap power and hit some doubles and triples, and is a respectable defensive outfielder. So going to do a little more digging on some of the players that are out there, but I will say that Ruaucho was definitely on our short list for this number 4 pick if our guy Gilbo wasn't there, which he's not. And I think we probably are going to go with Ruaucho. He's not a guaranteed star. He's looking for a lot of money. If he had a better work ethic, I'd feel better about him, especially because his personality is that his mind tends to wander. Hopefully we've got good enough coaching in the system to turn him into a player who realizes his full potential. But he's kind of the closest thing out there to Gilbo. Not quite the same contact and gap power, but he does have better home run power. Not quite as fast, but he still has the speed to hit a lot of doubles and triples and hit for a high average. Some of the other players we looked at, catcher Jose Flores, if he was better defensively, would be interested in him. Probably should have taken the catcher at the top of the draft last year, but we're not going to reach this year to make up for that mistake. Alex Pacheco, starting pitcher. Really nice profile. Also looking for a ton of money, and just really don't like this personality. You're going to have a hard time regardless of the skill set, and obviously his stuff is potentially off the charts. But if you've got a player with low work ethic and then some of these other character red flags, it's going to be hard for me to take that player number 4 overall. If I was picking 15th, 20th, 25th, 30th, and Pacheco is out there, maybe. But the 4th pick in a draft, I feel like you want to make sure that it works out. Yosef Zetu, very attractive, like the work ethic. Pretty close to the majors, or closer to the majors than some of the high school people as a 21-year-old college student. I don't like him as much as Ruaucho because he doesn't have the same kind of speed as Ruaucho. But certainly the batting profile is similar. It's just that the gap power is not worth as much when you're not that fast. But otherwise, he's kind of a similar prospect. I do like the work ethic, but he's not as good defensively. So that's why I lean to Ruaucho over him. A couple other players I looked at. Starting pitcher John Young. I really like him. But we just picked up a pitcher among the international amateur free agents, which makes me lean a little way against Young, but he's probably the closest in the competition with Ruaucho at this moment. And then another guy that we did look at was Devin Gale, center fielder. Like the work ethic, 18 years old, pretty decent batting profile potentially. Like the speed, not much of a base runner, and not quite as good potentially as Ruaucho defensively. So those are a few of the guys that we did look at. One guy that we weren't going to take, but I would love to be there in the second round, is catcher Chris Rodriguez. Above average defensively, good personality. Profiles as an average-ish major league hitter, but does have a little pop potentially. If he's available in the second round, he'll definitely be in the mix of people that we'll be thinking about, but I don't know whether he will drop that far or not. So it's going to come down to Ruaucho or John Young. Young's already got close to a major league fastball, not far off on the splitter. Obviously, we'll need the curve to develop to avoid being a reliever. Good at holding runners. Certainly has a frontline profile, and his bonus demand is more reasonable. If he had a high work ethic, he would be a easy pick for me right now. But I could say the same thing about Ruaucho. If Ruaucho happened to have a high work ethic, that would be the determining factor in my mind with him as well. We've got a lot of outfielders that have a lot of potential in our system right now. And we drafted another center fielder, number 1 overall last year. Raucho's really just an outfielder or DH. I just really like the speed, the stealing, the base running skill, but perhaps I'm just trying to make up for having lost out on Gilbo. I may pull an audible and go with John Young. Simply thinking that with his bonus of $9 million being a lot closer to slot, and the fact that we've got some money to spend this year, if there's a player with somewhat higher demand who happens to fall to the top of the second round, we might be able to get him. I certainly don't think Ruaucho will be that person, but I like to build teams with pitching. And I think that John Young is the best pitching prospect out there, but I'm going to check just to make sure. I've definitely gone back and forth on this. We're going to go with Ruaucho, like our scout recommended. John Young is not going to be there for us in the second round, but there are several pitchers that we like, notably Marcus Young, Gabe Montoya, Jordan Stallworth, and even down to David Tinoco, Israel Rodriguez. There's a few pitchers that we like. Young, who's the best, isn't going to be there in the second round, but I think there will definitely be a pitcher in the second round if we decide to go that direction who will be there. I know we just took a center fielder last year, but I really like the combination of contact, gap power, and home run power and speed that Ruaucho has. Think he's just too good a prospect to not sign. But in speaking of not signing, we're going to offer him the slot to start. I know we're going to have to 99.9% go up to the $13.5 million to get him signed, but we're certainly going to try to just get him for slot initially. Let's go and see who's available in the second round. Chris Rodriguez, the catcher that we had mentioned, definitely in the mix. Certainly profiles as someone who could be a starting catcher at the major league level if he completely develops. Plus ability, decent arm, good work ethic. Also a very reasonable bonus demand. He's definitely in the mix, but we're going to take a look through the rest of the players that are out there, and then importantly see which pitchers are available. Stallworth, who was a guy we were interested in, is still out there. Tinoco is still out there. So we've got a few guys to think about. And if we take a position player, it is going to be the catcher, Chris Rodriguez. Plus defensive catcher. The work ethic suggests that he'll probably develop with good coaching, which we do have. And a average-ish major league bat with a little bit of pop is pretty useful for a catcher. You know, his floor is a good backup catcher, and his ceiling to me is a guy who's probably an all-star 3 or 4, maybe 5 times over the course of his career. So a pretty valuable player to potentially pick in the second round. But there are a couple pitchers that I like. I had mentioned Jordan Stallworth, great stamina. His movement potentially off the charts. He's 18 years old, throwing in the mid-90s. Issue is that his arsenal is not all that impressive, but he can potentially have 4, maybe 5 major league quality pitches. So his stuff is never going to be exceptional, but with the movement and control, I think he can still be a pretty effective pitcher. And the other guy that I'm kind of interested in is honestly a similar profile in David Tinoco, also great stamina, excellent at holding runners. 18-year-old throws in the mid-90s, and you can see he's potentially got a 6-pitch arsenal. None of them are exceptional, but still could have plus stuff, plus movement, and plus control if he completely develops. He's also a lefty. I'm hoping that Tinoco or Stallworth will last to the next round. But I think Chris Rodriguez is, catchers, especially plus defensive catchers with good work ethics, who can hit a little bit with some power, who are willing to sign for less than slot, don't just grow on trees. Maybe I'm reacting a little bit to missing out at the catcher with the number 1 pick last year, but I think that Rodriguez makes more sense, and hope that Tinoco falls to me. Obviously, if Stallworth falls to me, that would be great too, but I hope that Tinoco falls to me in the next round. I guess I should see what the scouting director recommends, and he recommends Chris Rodriguez. So actually that makes me feel even better about it. We are going to... said he was looking for 1.6 million, but now he says he wants recommended slot. So we will meet Mr. Rodriguez's demand and see who's available here in the second round or in the third round. Scouting director recommends Andres Pereira. He's a player that we did look at last round. There's a lot to like about this guy. Not looking for a ton of money. He's durable. He's fast. He can bunt. He's got a great work ethic. The 2 things that I don't love about him are he's not a power hitter, but with his contact, gap, power, speed, his eye, and his avoiding Ks, he definitely brings a lot to the table. It's just he really doesn't have a position to play. He's listed as a second baseman, but that's not a good second base profile. He can't play short, can't play third, doesn't have the arm for it. He's only 5'10", so he can't play first base. And he's an awful left fielder. So the thing I didn't love about, I love everything about him except for the fact that if you bring him on board, you've either got a really bad defensive player at an important position like second base, or you've got a designated hitter that doesn't hit for power, which I guess it can be done. I'll have to see if either of the pitchers are available. In the third round, if Pereira is available, probably somebody to think about. But I'm hoping that either Stallworth or Tinoco slip through. And it does not look like Stallworth did. Tinoco. T is after R in the alphabet, so we can't see whether he's here. We've got to scroll down. And Tinoco is still around. I think I'm just going to go for him. He's not going to be an exceptional pitcher, but he can be a very effective major league starter. And I like guys with kind of an arsenal of a lot of pitches. His fastball, curve, slider, changeup, and splitter all could potentially be above average. And his sinker wouldn't be that bad. He's faced a good level of competition. I'm not going to overthink this. Tinoco was the guy that I wanted if he was available in the third round. So Tinoco is going to be our pick. Move on to the fourth round. And the scouting director recommends Oscar Medina. I assume that means that second baseman is gone. Yeah, not a shock. Oscar Medina, college shortstop. Nice defensive player, although he doesn't have a great arm. Excellent second baseman. You can play him at short or third if you have to. Don't feel great about it. Don't really want to play him in the outfield with that range. Just not that exciting of a hitting prospect, though. Hopefully we can find somebody better than him in the fourth round. All right, here in the fourth round, Bobby Astorga, starting pitcher. Like the fact that he's durable, like the work ethic. He's 18 years old. He's already throwing in the low to mid-90s. Can potentially have a 4-pitch arsenal. You never know if that changeup's going to develop, but with his work ethic, I think that he'll probably have a 3-pitch arsenal. His stuff is not going to be exceptional, but he's got good movement, acceptable control, great stamina. Interesting prospect. Definitely not going to be around in the fifth round if we don't take him now. Looking at the batters, you may ask why didn't you take Manny Long? He looks like a big-time player, and he does actually look like a pretty interesting player. You'd like better range and error for third base, but he can certainly play the position. Issue is that he's impossible to sign, so not going to waste any time on him. Gus Cuff is a left fielder, can hit a bit. Not a lot of speed, not that good defensively, just not that exciting to us. We are kind of on the margins thinking about all of these catchers, and I know you're saying to yourself, hey, you just took a catcher in the second round, but you made me remember that we were talking earlier about the fact that we're going to probably be losing Fuchs after this season, our starting catcher. Not that Josh Jackson will necessarily be ready to be a starting catcher next year, but he is a 22-year-old who college player, respectable defensively, and looks like he could have a respectable major league bat. Certainly looks like someone who could be a backup catcher in a couple years. But there's also a couple other catchers, Nelson Ortiz out there, similar, a bit above average defensively, nice work ethic, profiles is a little bit below average offensive player. And Gilberto Urena, 22-year-old, again, closer to being ready, like the work ethic, little above average defensively, and looks like, again, he could be a close to average offensive player, perhaps. So I think my hope is if we do go with the pitcher, one of those catchers falls to the fifth round, and we can pick one of them there. But there is one other player that I'm tempted by. And I will show you who that player is. And that player is shortstop David Green. He's just a very versatile player. You can see he's really not all that good defensively, but he can play any infield position, and he can really play any outfield position. Now, he's definitely not going to be great at any of these positions, but I do like that versatility and the fact that he can actually hit. He doesn't hit home runs, but he's got enough speed and contact and gap power to hit for a decent average, hit for a good average, and to have a lot of extra base hits. He's not going to strike out. He's somebody who can bunt. He's someone you can use as a pinch runner. Just a very versatile player to potentially get in the fourth round. So I'm intrigued by him, but there's also a part of me that when I look at his profile, our scout sees him as a 2.5 star potential. OSA sees him as 2.5 star potential. Is there a chance that he'll be around in the fifth or the sixth round? And I think there is a chance that he'll last that long. but I don't think I want to risk it. I'm definitely intrigued by the pitcher, but we've already taken a pitcher in the third round this year. We took a pitcher as an international amateur free agent this year, a starter, and we took starters in the second and third round last year. I just like the versatility of Green, especially for a team like Pittsburgh that doesn't have a ton of money to spend. Hopefully, 5 or 6 years from now when he's ready for the majors, that'll be a different situation. But having a player like this that you can plug into any position when you've got injuries, if you have a year where you're missing a third baseman or you're missing a left fielder or you don't re-sign your second baseman, you can put him out there to play any of those positions for a season or a couple months, and it's not going to be great defensively, particularly at second, third, and short, as you can see. But in the outfield, he's definitely competent. He's also going to be a competent first baseman. I just really like the versatility of him, and I don't think he's going to be around. He might be around next round. Do I want to roll the dice? How good is this pitcher? I love the work ethic. I love the durability. Worst case scenario is he's a fifth starter for us. The issue is that best case scenario is he's probably a fourth starter. He's got with the work ethic and the durability and the great stamina and the fact that he's working on 4 pitches, I think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to be successful. But even if he's completely developed as good as possible, he's a fourth, maybe a third starter. So there's just not a huge range of outcomes for him. But I honestly want and think that I should pick. Oh, I don't want to be looking at pitchers. Pick David Green. But I also just want to kind of find out whether a player like that can potentially last till the 5th round. So even though I think I should be picking David Green, I want to kind of just try to learn something here and see if there's a player who maybe doesn't jump off the chart, whether they can last another round in a situation like this. Also should probably see who the scouting director recommends that we take. Oscar Medina, Funky Cole Medina, college shortstop. Like the glove a lot. Not a great hitter. He's actually not a horrible player. Not looking for a ton of money. He's faced great competition at IU. He's 21 years old, but we are going to eventually need a replacement for Tony Fonseca. He's just not glamorous enough for me, but it's not a horrible suggestion. He's another guy. I don't think he'll be around next round, but I would certainly put him in the mix with the catchers and the second baseman, or actually he's a shortstop technically. The other I think he's a shortstop. You people are screaming at me that you've been looking at this screen for the last 15 minutes and you don't even know the guy's name or what position he plays. Okay, yeah, David Green is listed as a shortstop. All right, so I think now with David Green, with Oscar Medina, and with the 3 catchers that are out there, we should be able to get somebody that we're kind of interested in the fifth round. Actually, somehow I missed these other catchers. Isaiah Rice. Oh, yeah, he's just not that good defensively. And then Tony Gasca. Yeah, also just a little weaker defensively than I would like. But there will be players around in the next round, position players. And I do want to see if someone like Green falls. So we're going to go ahead and take Bobby Astorga here. Move right ahead to the 5th round. Scouting director recommends we go with Jorge Maynard. Decent looking pitching prospect. But now, let's see which position players are available and how much I screwed up by taking the pitcher in the 4th round. So some of those weaker defensive catchers are still around. And Jose Castillo is still around. Looks like the first college catcher was picked up. Looks like both of the college catchers were picked up, but one of them is still around. But now the big question is Danny Green still around? Or David Green, and David Green is still around. So we gambled and we won, I guess. We're going to take David Green now in the 5th round. Just really like his versatility. As I said, he can play just about any position. He's going to be able to play the outfield positions reasonably well, all of them. He can play anywhere in the infield. Not all that great at any of them. Probably a natural third baseman if you had to play him every day somewhere, or a first baseman. Like the speed, like the ability to bunt. Just think he's a really versatile player to have on a team. So we're going to take David Green here in the 5th round. Move on to the 6th. And they recommend we take David Aguilera, first baseman. Really interesting bat for someone left in the 6th round. Got a horrible personality and he's horrible defensively. But looks like he knows how to hit. But Jose Castillo, who is one of the catchers that we were looking at a few rounds ago, high school player, plus defensive ability, decent arm, looks like he can be a acceptable major league hitter. Definitely feel pretty good bringing a guy like him on board in the 6th round. So we are going to go with Castillo right now. 7th round, recommend the second baseman Willis Reynoso. It's actually not a horrible hitting prospect for a 7th round player. He's got some speed, pretty good contact hitter. Not great defensively. I guess if you have to play him, yeah, that's the thing. He doesn't have anywhere to play. You know, if the turn double play was better, you could play him at second base, but that's a pretty crappy double play rating for a second baseman. He's a mediocre outfielder also. I think we're getting to the point where there's not a ton of really interesting prospects left, so I won't subject you to the next 14 rounds of the draft. But I'm relatively happy with the way it came out. The only thing, maybe I should have done was taken the shortstop there in the 4th round. I really did like his defense, the one that our scout recommended taking. But I was kind of committed to trying to see if we could get a catcher, Green, and a starting pitcher over the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. And as it worked out, we did. So I've got no complaints, but probably will be regretting not having that good field no-hit shortstop in a few years when I could be using him at the major league level. And we've simmed ahead to July 25th, still in first place, but definitely coming back down to earth. You can see we've only got a 6-game lead on the Cardinals, 6.5 on the Reds right now in the division. And I guess the good news is that we signed or we drafted a lot of talented players. The bad news is that we had a lot of players in the later rounds, like Willis Reynoso, who you can see we've offered $750,000 to, that we've had to pay more than slot. So we've spent a lot on our players, and you can see that that has really taken the money that we have to bring on free agents down significantly. Still going to look to add some talent in the trade market before we get to the end of the month. But obviously, our ability to take on a big contract is limited. We're either going to have a team retain a big chunk of the contract, or go for players who make less money, or perhaps get rid of some players making some money in return on our side. So I'm really glad that in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round of the draft, we got some players who had fallen a little farther than they should have because of their demands, and I'm glad that we had the money kind of set aside to get them all signed. But that will hamstring our flexibility a bit in terms of being able to take on some salary here as we head towards the end of the month. And there's a lot of players available on the trade market, as you can see. Pretty big mix. Our old buddy Victor Avelar, making a lot of money. Oof. He was injured, so I think he's just come back from his injury, but has only been up for 2 games in Atlanta so far. Tend to think they're going to still want a decent amount for him. Oh, he might be making too much money. We could actually bring Avelar back on board, who wouldn't be the worst thing for our offense. When we look at team statistics, we're outperforming our Pythagorean record by just a game, so that makes me feel a little better that maybe we can hold on to things here. But you see we're 7-11 in July. Was kind of just a matter of time till we started coming back down to earth. But we're 6th in the National League in runs scored. We're still 1st in runs allowed. So certainly, somebody on the offensive side probably would make more sense for us than another pitcher. But we're going to take whatever we can get, since we don't have a lot of money to fit people in under the budget we have at this point, unfortunately. And this is just kind of sad. Our old catcher with Kansas City, Angelo Bolden, is a free agent. Looks like he's just been cut by Kansas City. I'd certainly love to have him in the minors. It looks like he's actually looking for some money, but if he'd sign for us in AAA, would love to have him on board. There's a little organizational depth, but I don't want to get distracted from the trade block. That has to be our main focus right now. All right, we've got a trade set up to bring us back Victor Avelar, who's a solid major league hitter. He hasn't proven that since he came back from his injury, where he hit just a .173 in AAA, and he's 0 for 7 at the major league level. But still certainly profiles as a good hitter with some power. He's also popular, for what that's worth. I know some of you are sick of me talking about player popularity. But we can get him, as well as Luis Perez, who's a nice defensive infielder for the minors, 25 years old, not really a prospect because he can't hit. And then Manny Villeda, another 25-year-old who just has a nice personality but is just organizational depth. We have to get up Ivan Gomez, who's not a horrible prospect. He's got a great personality. He's a decent defensive first baseman, and he looks like he can be a decent hitter, but he's 23 years old. He's hitting .279 with 9 home runs and 298 at-bats in Double-A. He's not a big-time prospect for us. So we're going to go ahead and bring Avelar back on. I think we can definitely use that bat. It may be coming off the bench. And the fans are pleased that we brought Avelar back. I guess that was a little boost in fan interest, but not much. the reason I brought him back, we don't really need another outfielder. But if you look at David Gallegos, who's a utility infielder for us, he's got just 31 at-bats this season. We're just not using the guy at all. So we're going to send Gallegos down to AAA because he still has options left. Put Avear onto the Major League team. Got to also figure out what we want to do with Villeda and Perez. I'm kind of hoping that Avear is just a super guy off the bench, although it's conceivable that with Gomez and Uribe right now splitting the left field action, although I guess it's Gomez in left. Yeah, and then it's Uribe in left. I think he'll take at-bats from one or both of those guys. Let's see what Jan Vasquez wants to do. Yeah, so that's taken some at-bats from Chris Gomez, but we're putting Avear right into the cleanup hole against right-handed hitting, playing left, and he's DHing against left-handed hitting and also hitting cleanup for us. So take some at-bats away from Chris Gomez, who, as you can see, has speed with 28 stolen bases, but he's hitting just 221 with a 291 on base percentage this year. Now, he does have some power, but I think we're better off with Avear in the lineup. So that's probably going to be about what we do in terms of trying to help the offense. The question is, can we find a pitcher to potentially help us with this money that we still have left? And of course, after trading for Victor Avear and weakening our infield at the major league level, Pat Peaches has a strained oblique. Going to be day-to-day for 3 weeks, but you can see it impacts his hitting. It impacts his hitting, throwing, and his running. He's already fragile in terms of his injury proneness. Surprised that I am talking about this with the Pirates, but we do want him to be healthy for the playoff run. So we're going to put him on the IL just to be very careful, and maybe bringing back Gallegos is the right thing to do, but we're going to take a look at the rest of the players that we have down in AAA and see if maybe there's someone with a little bit better of a bat than Gallegos to help us, although it actually looks like he probably has the best bat of any of these infielders we have down there. And we're actually going to bring up Jose Bernal since Pippin was mostly playing first, or not Pippin, since Peaches was mostly playing first base for us. Bernal gives us another left-handed bat, which we're light on right now. You can see he's not even starting anymore. Chris Gomez moves into the starting role at first base, so that puts him back in the lineup despite the fact that we brought Avear on board. But at least Bernal gives us a left-handed bat off the bench, which granted Peaches was, not Peaches, granted, boy, I'm having a tough time remembering these players. Aguayo, I think. Gallegos, sorry. Granted, Gallegos is also a left-handed bat, but I do think that Bernal is a better potential left-handed bat than Gallegos was. So we'll see what he can do over the next week or so coming off the bench while Peaches is banged up. And we made it to July 31st, the trade deadline. Take a look at the standings. Our lead continues to shrink down to 5 games over the Reds, 7.5 over the Cardinals. And you can see the Reds are the last wild card team right now. So we really are only 5 games up in the division, but we're only 5.5 up on the wild card. So our goal with the way this team has been playing is absolutely to make it to the playoffs, even though we are struggling lately. Hoping Avear can help with that, but he has not hit very much yet. 143 batting average, does have 1 homer and 21 at-bats. Hopefully he'll get a little more productive, but we need some help. It's been again, kind of more. I didn't think we would be as bad this season as we've been in July. Now, granted, we've got a great April, a great March, a great June, and an acceptable May in the books, which is why we still have got a 5-game cushion in the division, but still 6th in the league in scoring, 1st in runs allowed. But we've got a chance at making the playoffs with this Pirates team, with the lowest payroll in baseball. So if there's an opportunity to bring on someone who can help us, we've got to take advantage of it. All right, we've got a deal together to help our bullpen a little bit. I'm going to bring on Jaden Daniels from the Cardinals. Iron Man in terms of his injury proneness. He's a 34-year-old. Over the course of his career, his ERA plus suggests he's been a little bit above average, but his FIP minus is very average, and he's only put up a 3.4 WAR over the course of his career, and actually been a negative WAR player each of the last 2 seasons. That said, I think, you look at his pitching ratings, you look at his good fastball and his good cutter. I think he could help us out of the pen. Extreme ground ball pitcher. Take advantage of some of the good defensive players that we have in the infield, hopefully. And then we also get Ivan Miller, who's just a piece. We have to give up Julio Ramos, who's not a horrible pitching prospect. He's got a nice personality with a good work ethic. Doesn't really honestly have the stamina to really be a starter. He's never gotten out of rookie ball. Granted, he's only 20 years old. But everything is really going to need to come together perfectly for him to be a back end of the rotation major leaguer. And even then, it's kind of questionable how effective he'd be. He does have a good work ethic, but I don't view him as being a big-time prospect. And I think that Jaden Daniels can help us a little bit this year. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. Fans happy that we brought Daniels on board, which obviously helps. Get a little boost to fan interest. We'll open up a spot for Daniels by sending Omar Lopez down. He's been not good this year. 8.79 ERA over 14 and a third innings pitched for the 26-year-old. Still does have option years left. So Lopez has not been that effective this year. We're going to send him down to Indianapolis. That will allow us to put Mr. Daniels onto the Major League roster. Revamp our pitching staff here with manager Jan Vasquez. And you can see Daniels is going to step right into a setup role for us. So hopefully he'll prove to be a pretty useful player for us. So I feel like the addition of Jaden Daniels should help our bullpen, which when you think about our pitching staff is the potential area of concern, because we're first in starters ERA, but only in quotes, 4th in bullpen ERA. So that should help the bullpen hopefully on the margin. And then hopefully bringing on Avear will help our offense. I mean, honestly, with the 6th in the league in runs scored and 1st in the league in runs allowed, that's certainly a track record that you would think when 6 teams are making the playoffs. If you're 6th in batting and 1st in pitching, you're probably going to end up being a playoff team. And obviously we would be if the season ended today, but certainly the trends here in July have not been positive. I don't think there's anything else for us to do. I think we've made a small move to help our pitching, a small move to help our everyday lineup. When we get to roster call-ups in September, Andres Mendez, number 89 prospect in baseball, should be back, hitting .313 with 17 homers in Indianapolis this year. That left-handed bat probably going to be pretty useful, so I would think he would be the guy who would come up. Certainly the injury to Luis Molina hurts us because he was definitely going to be up with us by the end of by September 1st, if not earlier. But we do have guys who can potentially help us down there. Edgar Flores, guy who was reasonably effective at the major league level for us, but we just kind of ran out of a roster spot for him. He could be back. Certainly Omar Lopez, who we just sent down, could be back. And you can see, looking at Jose Matthews, Matthias Miller, Jose Ortega. There are bodies who will be able to help us, even maybe Vinny Ortiz. So we've got a little bit of depth. Was thinking about making another move to help the pitching, but quite honestly, we don't need a starting pitcher. We got 5 starting pitchers. The highest ERA of any of them is 3.87. And then when you look at the performance of most of the guys in the bullpen, could we improve from Willie Arenales? Maybe. 4.74 ERA and 24 2/3 innings pitched. And he does still have options left. He was one of our Rule 5 pickups from a season ago. I guess if there's another pitcher we can bring on, particularly if there was a lefty, that's maybe the last thing for us to think about doing. And we do have a deal to bring on the left-handed reliever Melvin Vasquez. He's not great. He's been the definition of league average in terms of his ERA plus and FIP minus. I guess technically the definition of just slightly below league average in his ERA plus, slightly above league average in his FIP minus. Has put up a 5.1 WAR over the course of his career. But I think at the major league level, he may be a little better than Arenales at this point. We don't have to give up much of anything to bring him on board, and we get another minor league reliever kind of thrown in for our trouble. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade too to bring on Vasquez. The fans are happy for that to happen. Since Arenales was on the team all of last year, we can safely put him down to AAA at this point. Kind of throwing out all the stops here. I don't know if this Pittsburgh team has just got... I do think this Pittsburgh team has just gotten incredibly lucky. I don't know if we're going to be in competition for a playoff spot against next year because we're going to be losing some players on this year's team because of their big performances and big arbitration numbers. We're definitely not going to be able to keep everybody. And then we've also got some players that are just headed into free agency. So I already put Daniels on the roster. Sorry. I get busy talking to you and I get confused. So Vasquez looks like he's going to be our lefty specialist out of the bullpen, which is fine. He's a little more effective against lefties than he is against righties potentially. Obviously, we can bring Arenales back in September if we like, or if we have some injuries. But I feel like with the additions of Daniels, Vasquez, and Victor Avelar, we're at least doing what we can, while quite honestly not spending the money that we have, because we've got people to retain all or most of those contracts, bringing them on board before they head into free agency. Just had to give up some prospects to pick them up, some useful prospects and some that we weren't all that concerned about losing. I feel like we're trying to make a run at it this year. And when I say a run at it, obviously you hope you win the World Series every year. The run at it with this team is really just to get into the playoffs. Obviously anything can happen when we get into the playoffs, but I would not be expecting a long run from this team if we are fortunate enough to get into the playoffs. But I would view it as a huge win if we're able to be in the postseason with this Pittsburgh team in our second season of this playthrough, given how awful they had been for so long before we took over last season. So we are, to the extent that we can, going for it. And we'll find out how Pittsburgh going for it in 2039 works out in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.